giving up and will be looking for every tenth.
With just 3 minutes left before we move to qualification, there is not long left for these drivers to finish their preparations.
The time clock can be a cruel mistress that is all too willing to show you your faults.
Kevin Lekmanski has a best lap time of 2:12.720.
If there is still time on the clock, there is still time to improve.
Ryan just posted a 2:15.451 crossing start finish. Ryan Wilson has a best lap time of 2:15.451. With just 2 minutes left before we move to qualification, there is not long left for these drivers to finish their preparations.
Wilson is not giving up and will be looking for every tenth.
Kevin Lekmanski has a best lap time of 2:12.720. Kevin Lekmanski posted 2:12.720 on his last lap, and will be pushing hard for an even lower time. Ryan just posted a 2:13.349 crossing start finish. With just 1 minute left before we move to qualification, there is not long left for these drivers to finish their preparations.
The time clock can be a cruel mistress that is all too willing to show you your faults.
Ryan Wilson has a best lap time of 2:13.349. Simon of the Desert has a best lap time of 2:15.229.
If there is still time on the clock, there is still time to improve.
Simon just posted a 2:29.869 crossing start finish.
Simon is not giving up and will be looking for every tenth.
With just 0 minutes left before we move to qualification, there is not long left for these drivers to finish their preparations.
The time clock can be a cruel mistress that is all too willing to show you your faults.
Ryan Wilson posted 2:12.631 on his last lap, and will be pushing hard for an even lower time.
There is always more time to be found, but Wilson is not guaranteed to find it.
Ryan Wilson has a best lap time of 2:12.631. Ryan Wilson has a best lap time of 2:12.631.
Wilson is not giving up and will be looking for every tenth.
With just 1 minute left before we move to qualification, there is not long left for these drivers to finish their preparations.
If there is still time on the clock, there is still time to improve.
Kevin Lekmanski posted 3:41.336 on his last lap, and will be pushing hard for an even lower time.
There is always more time to be found, but Kevin is not guaranteed to find it.
Kevin just posted a 3:41.336 crossing start finish.
The time clock can be a cruel mistress that is all too willing to show you your faults.
Ryan Wilson has a best lap time of 2:12.631.
If there is still time on the clock, there is still time to improve.
Ryan Wilson has a best lap time of 2:12.631.
There is always more time to be found, but Wilson is not guaranteed to find it.
Exotic streaming is on his practice out lap. It looks like Kevin MkII is getting ready to make his move. He's taking his time to warm up those tires and get everything just right. Kevin MkII is driving through Mountain Straight. Kevin MkII is expertly commanding that car through the cutting.
The ASRL T70 MkII Spyder is indeed a sweet-ass looking ride.
David Zahn is on his out lap. That ASRL T70 MkII Spyder looks good driving through Sulman Park.
Spectators near here can smell the smoke wafting from nearby grills.
David Zahn is looking relatively composed going through the Dipper.
The action and glory drivers have lived here at the Dipper is truly historic.
This is where the mental game comes into play. Kevin MkII is taking his time to prepare for his qualifying run.
This is the moment he's been preparing for. Let's see if he can execute.
Kevin MkII appears focused and prepared driving through Conrad Strait.
Don't forget to check out the views near Conrad Strait, they are fantastic.
The adrenaline is pumping. Simon of the Desert is on his out lap, warming up the tires and getting ready to put in a fast lap time. Simon of the Desert is driving through Conrad Strait. Simon of the Desert has completed his outlap. It's all about strategy in these early moments. Dangerous Dan is taking his time to prepare for his qualifying run and get everything just right. Dangerous Dan is keeping his head down through Quarry Bend.
Fans sitting near Quarry Bend get some of the best views of the action.
Dangerous Dan is expertly commanding that car through Sulman Park.
If Dangerous Dan listens closely, the sounds of cheering fans should just barely be audible over the roar of the engine.
It looks like Ryan Wilson is getting ready to make his move. He's taking his time to warm up those tires and get everything just right.
These are the moments that really matter. Let's see if Ryan can deliver.
Ryan Wilson is working his way through the dipper. There are just over 10 minutes left in this qualification session. That's the outlap done for Kevin MkII. He'll now look to focus on his first flying lap. Kevin MkII is down 0.18 seconds on the way through Mountain Straight. It's all about precision and speed in qualifying, and Ryan Wilson is nailing both.
Wilson certainly is nailing this one. This is shaping up to be a great performance.
Dangerous Dan will be looking to use this first hot lap to set a solid time in the standings.
Absolutely. Dangerous Dan is showing the world what he's made of.
This is what it's all about. Kevin MkII is putting everything he's got into this qualifying session.
Kevin is indeed a rare breed. It takes a special kind of driver to thrive under this kind of pressure.
Kevin MkII is currently up 0.47 going through Sulman Park. It's clear that Ryan Wilson is pushing his car to the very edge of traction on this qualifying lap. That ASRL T70 MkII Spyder looks good driving through McPhillamy Park. Ryan Wilson appears focused and prepared driving through Forrest's Elbow. Ryan Wilson is driving through the chase. Ryan Wilson has just completed that lap in 2:11.996, which is 0.822 off the best time, putting him in P2. The pressure is on in this qualifying session, but Dangerous Dan is rising to the occasion.
Let's see if he can put a good marker down.
Malero is on his first flying lap. Malero is looking relatively composed going through the chase.
There's a great spot near here to kick back with a cold drink and enjoy the beauty of it all.
Malero completes his lap in a time of 2:10.849, currently in P1. Ryan Wilson is 0.16 up driving through Griffina's Mount. Dangerous Dan is driving through Solman Park and is up 0.35.
All we can do now is wish Dangerous Dan luck as the start-finish line approaches.
David Zahn has found an extra 0.3. David Zahn is keeping his head down through the dipper.
This is such a great track. I need to make it back here more often.
That ASRL T70 MkII Spyder looks good driving through the chase.
To see the best action, you can't go wrong here at the chase.
Ryan Wilson will be happy, with a time good enough for third in this qualifying session. There are just over 5 minutes left in this qualification session. David Zahn is currently on provisional pole, with a time of 2:10.494. Malero is working his way through the chase. Malero is currently on provisional pole, with a time of 2:10.362.
That's a great time, but it's always a good idea to keeping pushing for every last tenth and hundredth.
Dangerous Dan is now up 0.13. Ryan Wilson appears focused and prepared driving through Solman Park.
This track has many great straights and corners, but this one is especially good.
Ryan Wilson is looking relatively composed going through the dipper.
There's a spot near here where the teenagers sneak off to make out.
Ryan Wilson has improved by 0.67 up through the chase.
If Wilson looks at that delta too much, it may end up being a distraction, and all that time he found may be lost.
Kevin Lekmansky has found an extra 1.09. Kevin Lekmansky will be happy, with a time good enough for third in this qualifying session. Dangerous Dan has some work to do, as his best time of 2:20.263 is only good enough for sixth. Dangerous Dan is keeping his head down through Mountain Straight.
I have always loved this section of the track.
That ASRL T70 MkII Spyder looks good driving through MkII Park.
When I get some free time after the race, I'm going to park my pudding near MkII Park with a nice drink and some friends.
Ryan Wilson is now up 1.15 in Forrest's elbow.
If Wilson gets greedy, this delta could go from green to red in the blink of an eye.
Ryan Wilson is working his way through the chase.
There's not much better than sitting near here and watching the cars speed by.
Ryan Wilson will be happy, with a time good enough for third in this qualifying session.
It may be difficult for him to find that missing 0.16, but that won't stop him from trying.
Dangerous Dan has put in a great effort and currently holds 6th. With the session winding down, time is running out to unleash his full potential for a better starting position. Impressive display by Simon of the Desert, currently sitting in P5. He's set a competitive time, but the question remains whether he can push even harder to secure a better starting position. Simon of the Desert appears focused and prepared driving through the cutting.
The action and glory drivers have lived here at the cutting is truly historic.
Simon of the Desert is in the green by 0.24, making his way through MkII Park.
Simon needs all the focus and resolve he can muster to maintain this pace.
Simon of the Desert is expertly commanding that car through Forrest's elbow.
Fuel, fumes, fans, and fights, Forrest's elbow has it all.
Simon of the Desert is looking relatively composed going through the chase. Simon of the Desert will be happy, with a time good enough for 5th in this qualifying session.
Every fraction of a second counts. He is surely working on that 1.471 gap to pole.
Currently in 3rd, Ryan Wilson has displayed promising speed during the qualifying session. The real test lies in whether he can convert this performance into a higher grid position. Ryan Wilson will be happy, with a time good enough for 3rd in this qualifying session.
It may be difficult for him to find that missing 0.16, but that won't stop him from trying.
A solid qualifying performance by Kevin Lekmansky, positioned in 4th. The question now is whether he can make further progress and challenge the frontrunners.
Spot-on analysis, how? Lekmansky is positioned well in 4th. It's crucial for him to maintain his focus and defend his position in the upcoming race.
Kevin Lekmansky is down by 0.26 going through Mountain Straight. Kevin Lekmansky is driving through Griffina's Mount.
Don't forget to check out the views near Griffina's Mount, they are fantastic.
It's an impressive showing by Kevin Lekmansky, currently in 4th. He's showcased his talent, but will need to find those crucial extra tenths to climb higher. Kevin Lekmansky will be happy, with a time good enough for 4th in this qualifying session.
Every fraction of a second counts. He is surely working on that 0.491 gap to pole.
Lining up in 24th is Asatic Streaming.
A tough start.
Malero is starting this race on pole.
The pressure's on now. Let's see if any of the other drivers can challenge for this spot at the start.
Starting on the front row gives David Zahn the best possible chance at challenging for the lead.
This is a great place to be, but there's always the threat of drivers right behind getting a better start and a slipstream into the first turn.
In the third position, it's none other than Ryan Wilson.
The Canadian driver will be focused on a good result from here.
On the fourth grid slot we have Kevin MkII.
Like many others, MkII is starting the race on the Standards tire compound.
Starting from the fifth position on the grid, we have Simon of the Desert.
Putting that ASRL T70 MkII Spyder into prime position for the race.
Dangerous Dan is going to be starting from sixth.
Dangerous Dan will be expecting to bring home solid points.
Starting from the seventh position, Stefano Amadei will need to navigate through the field to challenge for the win. And just like that, the race has started. Now, we'll see who has the skill and nerve to outmaneuver their rivals.
These opening moments can make or break a driver's race. Strategy and skill are key to navigating this intense start.
All the drivers will be trying to take advantage of the pack whilst they're still bunched up.
It all comes down to this how, where the rubber meets the road. There's no more time for talk, no more practice. The teams have done all they can, now it comes down to MkII to bring it home.
Having started in P2, David Zahn will be hoping for a good result in this race.
I for one am really excited how. The rivalry between Zahn and Wilson has been building before the race, and this is where scores are settled.
Is there a better sight than a field of elite racing drivers battling for position? Settling into a rhythm is going to be crucial here.
There are a few drivers with a point to prove, and a few with some grudges to bear. Let's hope they can keep it clean.
As the tires come up to temp, their available grip is changing, and the drivers that manage this transition best are likely to make progress through the field.
The first lap can always be a bit of a melee as everyone tries to establish themselves. It's easy for inexperienced racers to blow it in T1.
As we watch the drivers fight it out in the first lap, I can already feel that this is going to be an epic race.
Like gladiators they enter how, but instead of lions and swords our champions fight in an arena of tarmac, and with fire-breathing machines of cutting-edge materials, designed to explore the very limits of physics itself in what can sometimes be very much a fight to the death.
The pressure is on when the field is this tightly packed. Maintaining just enough aggression to hold off their rivals without pushing too hard will help these drivers keep it clean. Simon of the Desert will be studying the nearby drivers and looking for anything that could give them an advantage.
The race isn't won in the first turn, but there have been plenty that have ended there how.
The gap between Dangerous Dan and Simon of the Desert is widening. It's now up to 0.5 seconds.
This is a tough situation for Dangerous Dan. He'll need to find a way to pick up some speed and close that gap.
Tough break for Dangerous Dan, who has just lost a position.
Sucks to be them how.
It's a classic case of chasing down the car ahead for Kevin MkII, who is currently in P3. The race is really heating up. David Zahn is hunting down Malero with everything he's got.
Sometimes you have to take risks to win, but pushing the car too hard can be a costly mistake. Zahn needs to be careful not to overdo it.
It's certainly not going to plan for David Zahn right now, who is struggling to keep up with Malero.
It's not over yet, but Dave needs to get a move on if they want to catch up to Malero.
This will require some expert driving from Kevin Lekmansky. David Zahn is not making it easy, and the gap remains over a second. It looks like David Zahn is pulling away from Kevin Lekmansky. The gap is continuing to grow as they head through Skyline.
He needs to pick up the pace for sure, but that's not always a real possibility.
Every move counts now as David Zahn works to reel in Malero and overtake for P1.
We'll have to wait to see if Zahn can use the draft to his advantage, or if the lack of downforce will hinder his progress.
It's not looking good for David Zahn, who is still behind Malero, and the gap is increasing. Ryan Wilson is on a mission, chasing Kevin Lekmansky, who's desperately trying to stay ahead. It's been a solid race so far for Ryan Wilson. He's holding his position and keeping a steady pace.
Sometimes that's all it takes to secure a good result. Wilson just needs to stay focused and avoid any mistakes.
David Zahn is running second, and trying to keep up with Malero.
We'll have to wait to see if David can get into drafting range.
It's not going to plan for David Zahn, who is trailing behind Malero, and the gap is widening. He may not have an answer for this right now.
David needs to get it together to make a dent in that gap.
Look at the way the drivers are hugging those corners, it's like they're on rails.
Speaking of rails, did you know that the first racetrack was built on a railway in 1896? I bet those drivers were chugging along.
All joking aside, I bet they were. Things have come a long way since then, haven't they?
Definitely. It's amazing to think about the technology that goes into these cars now. I mean, they have more computing power than some countries.
David Zahn is trying to catch up to Malero. The gap is slowly closing, but time is running out. Situations like these often lead to a dramatic finish.
Indeed, the anticipation is high as Dave tries to reel in Malero.
The gap between Ryan Wilson and Kevin Lekmansky is razor thin as they vie for third in this nail-biting contest. Great effort from Ryan Wilson. His last lap was the best we have seen from him.
He certainly looked to be in the flow, but may have to improve further to hold on to fourth.
David Zahn is on a mission, chasing Malero, who's currently got a comfortable lead.
Zahn needs to focus to make up that gap to Malero.
Ryan Wilson is pushing really hard, but as we know, pushing too hard can lead to other mistakes, like locking up the brakes or missing a shift.
The mental game is just as important here. Wilson must keep his cool while putting pressure on Lekmansky.
Ryan Wilson appears to be losing ground on Kevin Lekmansky. He'll need to pick up the pace a bit heading into Mountain Straight to get a good exit and gain some ground. Things are heating up as David Zahn tries to close the gap to Malero.
Don't forget the role of aerodynamics. Dave should use slipstreaming to his advantage and close the gap to Malero.
Good news for David Zahn, the gap to Malero has decreased. It's now down to 0.6 seconds.
He'll be looking for a mistake to pounce on.
This is where the race gets really interesting. Ryan Wilson is closing in on Kevin Lekmanski.
The gap is 0.3 seconds now. Wilson is going to have to work a bit harder to close that gap with Kevin.
Ryan Wilson is trying his best, but can't seem to find the pace to keep up with Kevin Lekmanski at the moment. David Zahn is staying focused while chasing Malero in P1.
This is where every inch counts. David is pushing hard to close the gap on Malero.
The pursuit is on. Ryan Wilson is closing the gap on Kevin Lekmanski, determined to claim P3.
The gap between them is just over 0.3 seconds, which can feel like miles if you're trailing and not catching up.
The gap between Ryan Wilson and Kevin Lekmanski is widening. It's now up to 0.6 seconds. Oh, this is getting intense. David Zahn needs to keep Malero in his sights. The gap between David Zahn and Malero is growing. It's now up to 0.9 seconds.
This is a frustrating situation for Dave, but he can't give up just yet. He'll need to keep pushing and hope for a mistake from Malero.
Well, it doesn't look like Ryan Wilson is going to be much of a threat to anyone soon, let alone Kevin Lekmanski.
It's not over until the checkered flag drops, and it's important to maintain concentration until you've made it to the finish line.
It's game on now. Ryan Wilson has closed the gap to Kevin Lekmanski. It's now down to 0.5 seconds. Look at that. David Zahn is hot on the tail of Malero. The pressure is on as Ryan Wilson tries to catch up to Kevin Lekmanski. It seems like Ryan Wilson has got the bit between his teeth, improving on Kevin Lekmanski's lap time there. Pushing too hard can lead to mistakes, and we're seeing that now. That car is really unsettled from being pushed for every last bit of speed.
This is where every inch counts. Zahn is pushing hard to close the gap on Malero. Absolutely, precision and control are key here. Knowing when to push and when to hold back can be the difference between winning and losing.
Ryan Wilson is running fourth, and trying to catch Kevin Lekmanski. Looks like David Zahn is really hitting those curbs aggressively, which can unsettle the car and cause handling issues.
Indeed, taking too much curb can upset the car's balance, leading to oversteer or understeer.
This is where the skill and precision of the drivers really comes into play. Ryan Wilson is chasing Kevin Lekmanski in P3. It seems like Ryan Wilson is pushing hard, currently on track to record his best lap so far this race. The gap between Malero and David Zahn is pretty substantial right now. It's probably going to take a mistake from Malero to even allow David to get a look in.
Zahn certainly isn't going to be close enough to mount any kind of challenge soon unless it's down to a mistake from Malero.
This is what racing is all about. Two fierce competitors pushing each other to the limit. Hold on a second. And Kevin Lekmanski has just won the place from Ryan Wilson.
Go, go, go. That's what we want to see. You know what they say. Keep your friends close, and your racing rivals even closer. Looks like Lekmanski is taking that advice to heart today.
The race is really heating up. Ryan Wilson is hunting down Kevin Lekmanski with everything he's got. It seems like Ryan Wilson is struggling and not able to maintain his pace.
This may not be a track that Wilson is familiar with, which can be a pleasant challenge or an annoyance at being off pace.
You know, Ada, as a former racing driver yourself, can you give us some insights into what goes through a driver's mind during these quieter moments in a race?
Sure, Hal. During these moments, Drivers often take the opportunity to assess their race strategy, monitor their car's performance, and plan their next move. It's all about staying focused and finding the right time to strike.
The battle for P1 is heating up as David Zahn tries to catch Malero in P1. David Zahn has just put in a faster lap than Malero, so that's going to give him something to worry about. It's looking good for Malero, sitting in first. Some great driving from Malero, who has increased his lead over David Zahn and is starting to put some distance between them.
It's clear that Malero is dominating right now. He's making it very difficult for Zahn to catch up.
In your experience, Ada, what was the most important aspect of managing tire degradation during a race?
The most important aspect, Hal, was maintaining a good balance between pushing hard and conserving tires. Finding the sweet spot between aggression and tire preservation was key to optimizing race pace and strategy.
Malero is placed first at the moment. That's not a small gap, but David Zahn has what it takes to challenge for the position.
This is going to be a battle to the very end, with Zahn in P2 doing everything he can to catch up.
David Zahn needs to find some speed, or maybe get more consistent. Ada, he's just put in a slower lap than Malero. Hold the phone. That won't be ideal for Simon of the Desert.
It will be interesting to see if Malero can keep outpacing Dave.
David Zahn has a mountain to climb at the moment to close that gap with Malero. I expect his only hope at this point is that Malero makes an error. It looks like Malero is pulling away from David Zahn. The gap is continuing to grow as they head through Forrest's elbow.
This is where the mental toughness of David comes into play. He'll need to stay focused and keep pushing, even when things aren't going his way.
I think we just got time for a quick shout out to our human creators, Dave, Andy, John and Nigel, who have put so much effort into making this possible.
Yes, it's been a real thrill ride, and I for one look forward to future advancements in AI technology.
Apparently we are going to be announcing crashes and incidents soon. Let's hope they get the logic right. David Zahn is looking for a way to close that gap to Malero. Simon of the Desert will need to stay focused and keep pushing, even when the gap seems insurmountable. It's not over until the checkered flag drops. It's not looking good for Simon of the Desert, who is still behind Stefano Amadei, and the gap is increasing. David Zahn is trying his best to catch Malero. It's certainly not going to plan for David Zahn right now, who is struggling to keep up with Malero. Things don't seem to be going David Zahn's way in this race, as that's a big gap he'll have to close to even be in with a shout for gaining a place here.
Every race adds to a driver's experience, both good and bad. It just highlights that Zahn is going to have to get more serious with practice to not get outclassed on the circuit.
A strong showing from Kevin Lekmansky, who is currently third. Oh no, Ada, look at this. Ryan Wilson is closing in on Kevin Lekmansky. The gap is now just 5.0 seconds.
This is a real test for Lekmansky. He'll need to find some extra pace and hold off Wilson to have a shot at winning this race.
Malero is pushing to maintain the lead, while David Zahn is working to close in and challenge for the position.
This is where experience comes into play. Malero has been in this situation before and knows how to defend for position, but Zahn is hungry for success and won't give up easily.
The gap between David Zahn and Malero is getting smaller. The delta between David Zahn in second and Malero remains over a second, but David Zahn is not letting up.
That's right. Zahn in second knows to push it to the limit to catch up. But Malero is no slouch, and he's going to be pushing just as hard.
Well, it doesn't look like Ryan Wilson is going to be much of a threat to anyone soon, let alone Kevin Lekmanski.
It's not over until the checkered flag drops, and it's important to maintain concentration until you've made it to the finish line.
Ryan Wilson is pushing hard and has reduced the gap to Kevin Lekmanski to 5.8 seconds. As a former driver, Ada, how did you manage the physical demands of racing?
It's all about preparation, Hal. Drivers undergo rigorous fitness training to build their strength, stamina, and flexibility. A proper diet and hydration plan is also essential to ensure peak performance on race day.
It doesn't seem like things are going to plan for Ryan Wilson, as there is a big gap ahead.
Ryan certainly isn't going to be close enough to mount any kind of challenge soon unless it's down to a mistake from Lekmanski.
Things are going according to plan for Kevin Lekmanski, who is currently third.
Definitely, but he can't get too comfortable. There are plenty of other drivers gunning for that position, and Lekmanski has to keep pushing to stay on the pace.
Hold the phone. Looks like that's a mistake from Malero. This could be costly. The race is heating up as Kevin Lekmanski in third closes in on Malero.
We're witnessing a battle of skill and strategy between two great drivers, with Kevin in third determined to catch up.
It looks like Kevin Lekmanski is making a move. The gap to Malero is now down to 5.9 seconds.
This is where the pressure really starts to build. A driver that stays calm and focused is more likely to come out on top.
The gap between David Zahn and Malero is pretty substantial right now. It's probably going to take a mistake from David to even allow Malero to get a look in. It looks like we might get a battle between Malero and David Zahn. It's all about consistency for Kevin Lekmanski, who is currently third. He can't hold on. Kevin Lekmanski is losing time to Ryan Wilson. These drivers are walking a razor's edge between pushing the limits and making costly errors.
Absolutely. It's all about finding that sweet spot where you're pushing the car to its limits without crossing the line into reckless driving.
Now I may be wrong here, but I'm not sure that's the racing line. Malero is pushing really hard, but as we know, pushing too hard can lead to other mistakes, like locking up the brakes or missing a shift. Malero is trying his best, but can't seem to find the pace to keep up with David Zahn at the moment. The crowd is on the edge of their seats as Ryan Wilson in fourth chases after Kevin Lekmanski. Good news for Ryan Wilson, the gap to Kevin Lekmanski has decreased. It's now down to 0.9 seconds. Breaking development. A great moment for Malero, who has just gained a place and moved up the standings. Every move counts now as Malero works to reel in David Zahn and overtake for P1. Breaking news, folks. Heartbreak for David Zahn as they slip down the field.
Yes, but he can't give up. There's still plenty of time left in this race, and David needs to stay focused and keep pushing.
It's a tense battle for position between David Zahn in third and Ryan Wilson in fourth. David Zahn is keeping Ryan Wilson at bay with a gap of 0.2 seconds. Ryan Wilson has a mountain to climb at the moment to close that gap with David Zahn. I expect his only hope at this point is that David makes an error. The gap between Ryan Wilson and David Zahn is getting smaller.
Exactly what Ryan needed. He can't afford to lose any more ground to Zahn.
It's looking good for Stefano Amadei, sitting in fifth. Oh, Ada. Stefano Amadei has seen his lead over Simon of the Desert shrink to 1.5 seconds.
Can Stefano keep Simon behind? Let's see.
It looks like Simon of the Desert is pushing hard to catch up to Stefano Amadei.
It's a nail-biting race for sure, with both drivers showing incredible skill and determination.
Simon of the Desert is pushing hard and has reduced the gap to Stefano Amadei to 1.1 seconds.
This is where the race gets really exciting. Both drivers will be pushing to the limit to gain the advantage.
Fantastic racing on show here today, and it's not just the top drivers who are impressing us. Even the drivers at the back of the pack are putting up a good fight, battling it out for every position.
It's a testament to the level of competition at ASRL. Even the smallest mistake can cost you valuable seconds, or even lead to a crash. But these drivers are up to the challenge, and they're giving it their all. It's clear that ASRL really is the place to be for top quality racing.
On the final lap now, and Malero might just wrap up this win.
Malero is not leaving anything on the table.
It's all over. Malero has claimed victory in this race with a stunning drive that will be remembered for years to come. Clearly at the top of his game right now.
And that's why Malero is one of the best in the business. A dominant display of driving from start to finish, leaving the rest of the pack in the dust.
Kevin Lekmanski never gave up. He drove with heart and determination, ultimately securing a well-deserved second-place finish.
Strong work securing second place. Well done.
That was an outstanding performance from David Zahn. He fought hard and took the final spot on the podium. In fourth, it's Ryan Wilson. Stefano Amadei take fifth. Simon of the Desert claim sixth. Starting from pole position is a great opportunity for Simon of the Desert to take control of the race.
It's also a nightmare if he can't hold onto it. Let's see how he will handle the pressure.
Stefano Amadei will be looking to convert this front row start into a win.
He will have to be smart about his moves. He must not burn out too early.
Ryan Wilson will begin the race from the third spot on the starting grid.
Another good start for the Canadian driver.
The fourth place on the grid belongs to David Zahn, a driver with plenty of experience.
Let's see what David can do.
Kevin Lekmanski is holding down the fort in fifth place.
Kevin will be taking no prisoners today.
Coming in at 6th, we have MkII.
Starting from here, MkII may already have expectations of a podium finish.
Dangerous Dan is lining up 7th.
He's going to have to time his moves just right to move up the grid during the race.
And we're off. As the race begins, drivers must be wary of aggressive moves that can lead to trouble on the first lap.
The opening lap is often a hotbed of potential problems. The ability to steer clear of any mishaps will set the stage for a successful race.
As the drivers get this race underway, let me give a shout out to the admin team at ASRL for making this all possible. Heroes one and all. Races are often more about maintaining consistency than having outright pace, but it doesn't hurt to have a little good luck every now and then. Every lap is an opportunity for David Zahn to learn just a little bit more to shave a few tenths or hundredths off his times. It's like MkII saved something up for the race start as he's soaring up the leaderboard.
A fantastic start for MkII indeed, but the first lap can be very scrappy. Let's hope he can hold on to that place.
The tensions are high, and no one will want to make a crucial mistake on the first lap.
I'd love to be on track burning some rubber here, Hal.
Not the start that Ryan Wilson wanted in this race. Seems he's been caught off guard from the get-go.
I'm sure Wilson isn't laughing, but he's given us a bit of comic relief with that slow start. Time to get serious and make up some ground.
MkII can be very proud of that start and gaining position so early.
It's too early to count chickens just yet. A race isn't won in the first lap, but I've seen plenty end there.
The stewards will be hoping that there aren't too many incidents for them to pick over when the dust settles on this one.
Every corner, every lap, and every race is a chance for these drivers to hone their abilities and improve their skills.
Talk about pressure. MkII is caught in the middle, feeling the heat from both David and Kevin.
I couldn't agree more, Hal. The gaps to the cars ahead and behind provide valuable information for MkII. He'll need to assess the situation and use the gaps strategically to plan the next move.
Things are heating up as David Zahn tries to close the gap to MkII.
The racing is getting tight between Zahn and MkII as they battle for P3. No doubt, both drivers know that one mistake could cost them the position. It's a test of nerves as much as skill.
Things don't seem to be going Ryan Wilson's way in this race, as that's a big gap he'll have to close to even be in with a shout for gaining a place here.
Every race adds to a driver's experience, both good and bad. It just highlights that Wilson is going to have to get more serious with practice to not get outclassed on the circuit.
Oh, this is getting intense. Melero is just a few car lengths behind Kevin Lekmanski.
It's a fine line between pushing the car to its limits and losing control. Melero is really walking that fine line.
The gap between Melero and Kevin Lekmanski is widening. It's now up to 0.6 seconds. It's a brilliant day for racing, and the drivers are putting on a show.
Absolutely. What a great race we are witnessing today. These drivers are giving it their all, and it's a thrill to watch them compete at this level.
They're really pushing themselves and their machines to the limit, and it's paying off with some incredible driving.
It's a pleasure to be here today, Hal. You really can't beat the excitement of a good race, especially one as competitive as this.
Ryan Wilson is giving it his all, chasing down Stefano Amadei in P5. This is a thrilling battle as Kevin Lekmanski edges closer to Simon of the Desert in their fight for P1. It's a solid performance from Kevin Lekmanski at the moment. He's holding his position and not getting too caught up in battles around him.
It's a marathon, not a sprint. Lekmanski just needs to bide his time and wait for the right opportunity.
The pressure is on as David Zahn tries to catch up to Melero.
It's all about finding the perfect opportunity. Zahn needs to stay patient and wait for Melero to make a mistake.
We got a close battle as Ryan Wilson closes in on Stefano Amadei.
As a former driver, I can tell you there's nothing quite like the adrenaline rush when you're this close to your rival, ready to make your move.
Kevin Lekmanski is on a mission, chasing Simon of the Desert, who's desperately trying to stay ahead. Pushing too hard can lead to mistakes, and we're seeing that now. That car is really unsettled from being pushed for every last bit of speed.
It's a game of strategy now as Stefano hunts down Wilson. Yes, it's all about choosing the right moments to push and when to conserve energy, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike.
This is what high-octane racing looks like. Kevin Lekmanski is breathing down the neck of Simon of the Desert, not giving him any room to relax.
It's a battle for position as Lekmanski tries to make a move on Simon. This is what racing is all about.
Stefano Amadei is running 6th and trying to catch Ryan Wilson.
Stefano needs to focus to have a chance at getting past Ryan.
The crowd is on its feet as Kevin Lekmanski chases down Simon of the Desert through Sulman Park. Stop the press. A great pass for Kevin Lekmanski, swapping places with Simon of the Desert to move up the field.
Yes, but Lekmanski needs to keep pushing hard. This race is far from over, and anything can happen. Lekmanski needs to stay focused and drive with skill and determination. Should things go awry, Kevin and Simon might find themselves giving a whole new meaning to the term tandem drifting, though I doubt they'd enjoy it as much as the spectators.
Hold the phone. A setback for Melero, who has just been passed.
Yes, but there's still plenty of race left. Melero needs to stay calm and focused, and make his move when the time is right.
Melero is placed 3rd at the moment, and hoping to keep his distance ahead of Simon of the Desert, who is 0.6 seconds behind. The pressure is on as Ryan Wilson works on catching up to Simon of the Desert.
You can see that car bouncing around as it rides the curbs. It's a risky move that could end in disaster.
It's game on now. Ryan Wilson has closed the gap to Simon of the Desert. It's now down to 0.2 seconds.
That's a great effort from Wilson. He'll need to keep up the pressure and see if he can make a move.
It doesn't seem like things are going to plan for David Zahn as there is a big gap ahead.
Anything can happen yet, and it usually does. I've certainly seen drivers come back from worse.
The pursuit is on. Ryan Wilson is closing the gap on Simon of the Desert, determined to claim P3.
This is not going to be an easy pass to make.
It looks like we might get a battle between Ryan Wilson and Simon of the Desert. It's looking good for Ryan Wilson, who has gained a place after passing Simon of the Desert. Kevin Lekmanski is placed 1st at the moment.
That's right, Kevin can't afford to make any mistakes or let up. Every point counts in this championship.
It looks like David Zahn is starting to catch up to Kevin Lekmanski. The gap is now down to 4.5 seconds.
This is a critical moment in the race for Kevin. He'll need to find some extra speed and stay ahead of Zahn.
Well, it doesn't look like Malero is going to be much of a threat to anyone soon, let alone Simon of the Desert.
It's not over until the checkered flag drops, and it's important to maintain concentration until you've made it to the finish line.
The gap between Malero and Simon of the Desert is growing. It's now up to 1.8 seconds.
Malero needs to focus and keep pushing, even when things aren't going his way. If he can close the gap down, he may be able to bring the fight to Simon.
The gap between Simon of the Desert and Malero is pretty substantial right now. It's probably going to take a mistake from Simon to even allow Malero to get a look in. Things don't seem to be going David Zahn's way in this race, as that's a big gap he'll have to close to even be in with a shout for gaining a place here.
Every race adds to a driver's experience, both good and bad. It just highlights that Zahn is going to have to get more serious with practice to not get outclassed on the circuit.
It looks like David Zahn is making a move. The gap to Kevin Lekmanski is now down to 2.8 seconds. So, Ada, considering the high speeds and split-second decision-making involved in racing, what's the impact of even a minor lapse in concentration?
A minor lapse in concentration can have significant consequences, Hal. It could lead to an off-track excursion, a loss of position, or even a collision. That's why it's crucial for drivers to stay focused and alert throughout the race.
The delta is just over a second, and you can feel the tension in the air. Malero needs to find a way to close the gap.
Malero needs to find a little extra speed to bring the fight to Simon and move up the field.
The gap between Malero and Simon of the Desert is getting smaller.
He'll be looking for a mistake to pounce on.
This race is getting even more intense. The drivers are pushing each other to the limit.
It's like they're playing a game of chicken, but with cars. And the winner gets to take home the checkered flag and bragging rights.
That's one way to put it. These drivers have to be in top physical and mental shape to compete at this level.
It's like they're training for the Olympics. And like you said, the mental fortitude required to stay focused and alert for the entire race is wild.
I think I need a nap just watching them. It's a game of cat and mouse out there, with David Zahn trying to find the perfect opportunity to make a move on Kevin Lekmanski. The gap is over a second, but every fraction counts. Braking development. Oh dear, Dangerous Dan has had an incident. Look at that, Malero is hot on the tail of Simon of the Desert. It seems like Malero is struggling. His last lap time was a bit off the pace of Simon of the Desert. Well, it looks like we have a bit of a traffic jam on the track.
It's like rush hour out there. I mean, I know we're in a race, but can't we all just get along?
You can wish all you want, but I don't think that's how racing works, Ada. These drivers are here to win, and they'll do whatever it takes to get ahead.
I guess you're right, but wouldn't it be great if they all just stopped for high fives and fist bumps?
Oh, this is getting intense. Malero is just behind Simon of the Desert.
If this battle ends in tears, it could be like watching a high-speed domino effect. Let's hope they keep it clean and avoid any unplanned off-track excursions.
Dangerous Dan is pushing hard and looking for any opportunity to close that gap to Stefano Amadei. There's 11 minutes left in this session to make that happen. Simon of the Desert wants to close that gap with Malero.
He'll need to keep it on the road, or at the very least the rumble strips. The fastest way around is not usually in the grass. As the saying goes, too much grass will slow you down.
Looking at the lap times, Simon of the Desert is not currently on pace with Malero. Maybe he'll get a chance to see where to make up some time. This is where the skill and precision of the drivers really comes into play. Simon of the Desert is chasing Malero in P4.
I would not be surprised to see him get this pass completed soon.
This will require some expert driving from Dangerous Dan. Stefano Amadei is not making it easy, and the gap remains over a second. Dangerous Dan is pushing hard and has reduced the gap to Stefano Amadei to 18.2 seconds.
This is where the pressure really starts to build. A driver that stays calm and focused is more likely to come out on top.
Every move counts now as Simon of the Desert works to reel in Malero and overtake for P4. Simon of the Desert needs to find some speed, or maybe get more consistent. Ada. He's just put in a slower lap than Malero.
Hopefully Simon can find some of that missing time and get it back.
What a move. Simon of the Desert has moved up to 4th. Wait. That won't be ideal for Malero. Look at that. They're trading places in every turn, a constant game of cat and mouse. Each driver knows one mistake could cost them dearly.
Absolutely. How? The slipstream plays a crucial role in these battles. The drivers are using every trick in the book to gain an advantage while constantly evaluating when to make their move.
That's not a small gap, but Stefano Amodei has what it takes to challenge for the position. It's game on now. Stefano Amodei has closed the gap to Malero. It's now down to 4.6 seconds.
Exactly what Stefano needed. He can't afford to lose any more ground to Malero.
A solid performance from Malero, who is holding down 4th.
Absolutely. And he'll need to keep driving with determination to stay in that position.
Impressive driving from Malero, who has managed to extend his lead over Stefano Amodei. It looks like Stefano Amodei will have to regroup and try to make up that lost ground. As a former racing driver, Ada, how challenging was it to adapt your driving style to account for tire degradation throughout a race?
It was a constant challenge, Hal. Tire degradation can change the car's balance and handling, so drivers need to be versatile and adaptable. It requires continuous adjustments to driving techniques and a keen understanding of the car's behavior.
Things are going according to plan for Malero, who is currently 4th.
Yes, but Malero has to keep his focus and drive with intensity. There's still a long way to go in this race.
Simon of the Desert has a mountain to climb at the moment to close that gap with Stefano Amodei. I expect his only hope at this point is that Stefano makes an error.
Anything can happen yet, and it usually does. I've certainly seen drivers come back from worse.
It looks like Stefano Amodei is pulling away from Simon of the Desert. The gap is continuing to grow as they head through Forest's Elbow. The track conditions are looking good here today. The drivers will be able to push the cars to the limit, and it's going to make for some exciting racing. The pursuit is on. Stefano Amodei is working on that gap to Malero, determined to claim P4. Stefano Amodei appears to be losing ground on Malero. He'll need to pick up the pace a bit heading into Mariah's corner to get a good exit and gain some ground. It doesn't seem like things are going to plan for Stefano Amodei as there is a big gap ahead.
It's not over until the checkered flag drops, and it's important to maintain concentration until you've made it to the finish line.
A strong showing from Kevin Lekmanski, who is currently 1st. The gap between Kevin Lekmanski and David Zahn is getting smaller. It's now down to 4.8 seconds. Well, it doesn't look like Stefano Amodei is going to be much of a threat to anyone soon, let alone Malero.
Stefano certainly isn't going to be close enough to mount any kind of challenge soon unless it's down to a mistake from Malero.
Good news for Stefano Amodei, the gap to Malero has decreased. It's now down to 0.4 seconds.
This is what racing is all about. Hard-fought battles with as much determination as respect, between friends and enemies alike.
This is where the race gets really interesting. Malero is closing in on Stefano Amodei.
The gap between them is now just over 0.6 seconds.
It's not looking good for Malero, who is still behind Stefano Amodei, and the gap is increasing. In your experience, Ada, what was the most challenging aspect of maintaining concentration during a race?
The most challenging aspect, Hal, was managing the various inputs and distractions during the race, from radio communication with the team to monitoring car performance and race strategy. It's a delicate balancing act that requires immense mental discipline.
It's all about consistency for Stefano Amadei, who is currently fourth. Stefano Amadei is on a charge. His split time shows he's upped his pace. It's a classic case of chasing down the car ahead for Malero, who is currently in P5. It looks like we might get a battle between Malero and Stefano Amadei. You know, Ada, I've always wondered, how do racing drivers stay so cool and collected under such immense pressure? Breaking news, folks. Looks like that's a mistake from Ryan Wilson. This could be costly.
Oops, Wilson is going to be wishing that hadn't happened. Well, Hal, it comes down to mental strength and training. Drivers often work with sports psychologists and practice techniques like meditation and visualization to help them stay calm and focused during high-pressure situations.
Breaking alert. Now I may be wrong here, but I'm not sure that's the racing line.
Simon is not going to be happy about that.
Looks like Malero is really hitting those curbs aggressively, which can unsettle the car and cause handling issues.
Indeed, taking too much curb can upset the car's balance, leading to oversteer or understeer.
It's certainly not going to plan for Malero right now, who is struggling to keep up with Stefano Amadei. Things are heating up as Malero tries to close the gap to Stefano Amadei. Ryan Wilson will need to stay focused and keep pushing, even when the gap seems insurmountable. It's not over until the checkered flag drops.
David is not going to give up his position easily.
It's not going to plan for Ryan Wilson, who is trailing behind David Zahn, and the gap is widening. He may not have an answer for this right now.
This is a tough situation for Ryan. He'll need to find a way to pick up some speed and close that gap.
Things don't seem to be going Malero's way in this race, as that's a big gap he'll have to close to even be in with a shout for gaining a place here. It looks like Malero is making a move. The gap to Stefano Amadei is now down to 1.2 seconds. Malero is staying focused while chasing Stefano Amadei in P4.
It's a game of strategy now as Malero hunts down Stefano.
David Zahn has a mountain to climb at the moment to close that gap with Kevin Lekmanski. I expect his only hope at this point is that Kevin makes an error. The race is really heating up. Malero is hunting down Stefano Amadei with everything he's got. The gap between Malero and Stefano Amadei is growing. It's now up to 0.6 seconds. Malero is looking for a way to close that gap to Stefano Amadei.
It's all about choosing the right moments to push and when to conserve energy, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike.
Kevin Lekmanski is placed first at the moment. Oh no, Ada, look at this. David Zahn is closing in on Kevin Lekmanski. The gap is now just 2.0 seconds.
He'll need to step up his game and start pulling away again.
Ada, what's the impact of tire degradation on race strategy? How does it affect a driver's approach to the race?
Tire degradation plays a crucial role in race strategy, Hal. Teams and drivers have to consider the optimal time to pit for fresh tires and adjust their race pace to balance speed with tire conservation. It adds another layer of complexity to the racing challenge.
The gap between Stefano Amadei and Malero is pretty substantial right now. It's probably going to take a mistake from Stefano to even allow Malero to get a look in.
Anything can happen yet, and it usually does. I've certainly seen drivers come back from worse.
It seems like Malero is struggling. His last lap time was a bit off the pace of Stefano Amadei.
It will be interesting to see if Stefano can keep outpacing Malero.
The delta between David Zahn in second and Kevin Lekmanski remains over a second, but David Zahn is not letting up. The gap between David Zahn and Kevin Lekmanski is getting smaller. The battle for P4 is heating up as Malero tries to catch Stefano Amadei in P4. The gap between Malero and Stefano Amadei is widening. It's now up to 1.1 seconds. It's like Kevin Lekmanski has saved all his energy for this final stretch.
That's an impressive burst of speed. It's all but said and done now.
And it's a checkered flag for Kevin Lekmanski, who crosses the finish line with a commanding victory. What a phenomenal performance, absolutely dominant today. Impressive second-place finish for David Zahn.
Brilliant. Dave showed great skill and determination to take second place.
Well done to Ryan Wilson for securing third place on the podium. Coming in fourth we have Stefano Amadei. Finishing fifth is Malero. Simon of the Desert End in sixth.